Sinu Huang. I'm CEO and founder of Sixup. We're a for-profit technology company innovating the ways to provide scalable education financing and support to high-achieving low-income students who are underfunded and underserved. I myself was one of those kids. I grew up in a single-parent family, immigrant father who taught martial arts and worked at a lumber mill in Eugene, Oregon at night to support 3 kids. My pathway's pretty nice pathway, going from Oregon, transferring to Northwestern, graduating with 7 job offers, and taking my first job at A.T. Kearney, making twice my dad's annual household income. However, the real story is that I had to hack my way all the way up that pathway. I had an intervention of a mentor who advised me to not go down to UC San Diego and move for a year to get residency before going to school right away. I went to Oregon for my first year, and once I got into Northwestern, I had to take a year off to help save money to pay for school. They didn't give me a full ride scholarship. And then as soon as I landed at Northwestern, I started working 9 jobs year long, during the week, weekends and summers. I was a math tutor, personal trainer. I was an athletic supervisor as part of my work study. On weekends, instead of hanging out with my fraternity brothers, drinking beer, I'd go down to Michigan Avenue and work at Nike and J. Crew, selling shoes and clothes. And then on the summers, I never went back to Eugene because I made more money in Chicago, staying there, paying for my own housing, but working to save money. I ended up getting the opportunity to interview with great companies like Morgan Stanley and JP Morgan and McKinsey because they come to Northwestern to recruit, which they don't at Oregon, which is one of the reasons why I really wanted to go to Northwestern. But I had a weak resume. I didn't have any summer internships that my fraternity brothers had, being able to take unpaid internships and build their resume. So I had to show up at 7 in the morning and knock on the doors, talk to the interviewers and say, I know you're on campus. I didn't get picked in the lottery. I didn't get picked in the resume. But boy, I'd really like to interview with McKinsey because it's a great firm. Can I buy you coffee or can I buy you lunch? 9 times out of 10, they said, no, you can't do that, Sunil. You got to talk to HR. And every 1 or 2 times, they say, if you're going to show up at 7 in the morning and do this, I think I can have coffee with you. So I ended up making it, but again, had to hack this solution. We have a whole host of people on the team who went through their own respective journeys, transferring from community colleges to 4-year schools, coming from extreme poverty backgrounds, having to work during school, and in often cases, not even being able to go to their dream school, staying at the school, the baseline school they got into. So what we've done is assemble this team to really think about how do you combine fintech and edtech, big data, and then also how do you engage community and systems that are already out there serving this population and create a new system that can really scale to provide education financing and student support along the pathways. So we believe pathways matter. We think it's much more than a student loan problem or a college access problem. It's really how do you get students into the system and to the finish line. Why does this matter? As everyone's heard, 2/3 of all jobs by 2020 are going to require post-secondary credentials. We know that if you look at the data, that the high income bracket are pretty much high degree attainment. But if you look at the low income at the very bottom, they've barely progressed since the 1970s. So from our point of view, they represent our nation's biggest talent pipeline if you're going to draw that talent into those jobs that the country needs. But we also have a distribution problem. You have a very gentrified distribution of low-income students in the less selective, non-selective schools, and all the rich kids are going to the elite schools or the more selective schools. And why is that matter? Because students that go to the better schools have better outcomes at both the institutional level and the student record level. And it's not by it's not by incremental, it's orders of magnitude. Graduation rates can go up 6x if you think about up funding and up matching students to go to the better schools. And realized federal loan default rates drop just by simply going to better schools. But the problem is, how do you get the students into the system? And really there are kind of 2 ways. If you look at the bottom bracket, the low income students are on a good baseline track for 2-year institutions, community colleges, JCs. And it used to be that federal loans and grants would cover that cost, and that's increasingly not the case. Now, if it comes from a high-income family, they pretty much are on track for a 4-year selective or elite school. So there's a lot of work out there being done in the K-12 space to lift the low-income students into admission into 4-year institutions. The problem that they're facing is they're hitting a wall because they can't find the funding to go to school. Our focus right now are really those students that get into 4-year schools that are not the Ivy Leagues. They're the ones that don't need the help as much as the Main Street students at the Main Street schools. But again, these schools are not giving them full ride scholarship. How big is the size? It's 7 million students, or what we deem high-achieving, low-income students that gained admission to a 4-year school, want to transfer from a 2-year to a 4-year school, or somehow found their way into the system like I did and are hacking their way through but still need money to relieve themselves of financial stress. The average gap for these students at a four-year public-private institution is between $5,000 and $15,000 per year. So if you aggregate the problem times 7 million students and you want to fund this high-achieving low-income student that deserves to go to these schools, in aggregate, it's a $30 to $100 billion problem per year. This is net of the $100 billion federal loan program. It's net of the $40 billion Pell Grant program, so it's already maxing out on that money. And it depends on what institutional aid you get from different schools. Some are very generous, some are not. So we've really kind of taken a step back to think about how do you now look at the capital markets and create a system for high-achieving low-income students to be funded that are going to make it. And think about the old paradigm where kids like me and everyone on our team, we get stuck into subprime because the capital markets don't know how to read, evaluate us because we don't have a cosigner, we don't have FICO. So we're really creating a new paradigm from a capital markets perspective to scale the financing that you need to create a new model and a new asset class that we call future prime. If subprime's on the bottom, prime is up on the top, the intersection there is where we get all these missed opportunities, demand aggregate that asset class into 7 million students per year and $30 to $100 billion per year. So what do? We provide lifecycle funding, student support, and knowledge to our students. The funding is a combination of loans and grants. Student support is outcomes-based, and I'll go through that a little bit. Our model and our whole system is to really wrap these students around an outcomes-based model that focuses not on point transactions of money, but really funding and incubating students into lifting them into better schools, what we call upmatch, making sure they stay in school, do well in school, make sure they have summer internships on their resume, make sure they graduate on time. Instead of 6 years, we want to drive it back to the 4-year rate. And then also make sure they land those jobs and those dream jobs to be able to perform, create wealth, and also pay off whatever loans that they need to do. How do we do that? Our system is based on a 3-system stack level. It's capital, community, and on the bottom, tech and data. On the capital front, we've aggregated both lending capital and debt, grant capital from folks like Prudential Foundation, Strategic Family Offices, Deutsche Make America's Foundation. We've engaged community-based partners that are out there actively working with the students in K through 12. They are a great way to get a qualified pipeline of the 7 million students they're working with. They also provide student support throughout the college experience. All this is powered by tech and data, and I won't go too much into it, but we've got a lot of fintech, edtech, infrastructure software. We have an origination platform, a servicing platform to operate as a lender. We have underwriting algorithms that look at 5 different ways to evaluate these students that right now are not being done in the market, neither by the private banks or the federal government. We look at what school you get into. We look at what your financial stress is. We look at your academic performance while you're in school. We look at qualitative criteria, and we also draw from a qualified pipeline. So we believe we can position ourselves to outperform the federal government default rates, which are right now roughly 12% off of a loan book of $100 billion per year. Our traction today, we've raised $8.5 million. We started in 2015. We're in our 3rd year effectively. We've shifted from building and using this money to build the infrastructure to operate to pilot in Texas starting fall of last year. We started funding students in the fall, kind of proving the machinery works from conversion to funding to underwriting, and now are in the process of expanding to 8 states right now this year. And through that process, we're going to scale from, we've funded to date 60 students. We started at 9 fall of last year into 23 winter semester, and now are ramping up towards 60 to a target bogey of about 550 students this fall. So it's real. We're funding real students that want to transfer to a 2-year, from a 2-year to 4-year school, that want to upmatch to the dream school instead of downgrading schools because they can't afford it, and certainly students like me that don't want to keep hacking it as rigorously as we have to so they can focus on academics and job creation. Thank you very much, and from our standpoint, we're always looking for strategic family offices that are looking to anchor states that they care about with debt capital, as well as corporate sponsors that over time want to get access to our initial use case of talent, which are going to be STEM minority, STEM female, so they can pull that aspirational talent from underserved communities into summer internships and full-time jobs. And then there'll be limited pre-Series A equity opportunities for either of those 2 camps when we raise our Series A next year in the fall of 2018. Thanks very much for your time.